Have you ever had a frightening encounter that you couldn't explain? In this episode, we hear from Ross and Jonathan, who recount some of their more chilling experiences. And we'll also be joined by paranormal investigator Mark Ponting, who reports on a mischievous poltergeist that he was tormented by in the ancient Ram Inn. I'm Nathan Head, and you're watching Aberration into the Unknown.
For most of us, the worst thing we have to endure during a holiday in the UK is bad weather. But for Ross and his friend, when they were staying close to a marina in Cornwall, and the two decided to experiment with a homemade spirit board, getting wet was the last thing on their mind.
As far back as I can remember, I have always had a belief in the paranormal. I've always believed in God. I've always maintain the thought that there is more to this life than the one we live now, and there is far more out there than we can properly, truly ever understand while still on this earth. I've always had a massive interest in anything classified as paranormal, be it UFOs, ghosts, demons, mythical creatures. There have been a couple of occurrences in my life that have helped mould this belief in me, little things I've seen, heard, but none more convincing to me than what occurred one holiday when I was 14 with a friend when we were staying in Cornwall. The place we were staying was on Milo Harbour, which is in Truro, a little place just by the sea. There's also still very strong fishing community going on there. House about 100 years old or so. Conveniently fairly close to the graveyard. Why wouldn't it be? And it's a holiday home that my family and I have been to numerous times since I was about 5. It belongs to my mother's friend, and I've always had a weird, creepy feeling about it. There's always been a feeling of unease that I can never quite explain, even way back when I was about 5. But I never saw anything, really, so, I just dismissed there being anything there. But on this one occurrence, when my friend came with me this time, for some unknown reason, we thought it would be a fun idea to create our own Ouija board. And when I say create, I mean we literally just had a piece of paper, cut out all of the letters. We got a glass, simple glass tumbler, and a candle. That was it. That was literally all we used. We set up our little board. Again, I don't know what we were hoping to achieve with this, or who we were hoping to contact. I don't know why we thought this was a good idea. But so we went ahead. We got out all our little letters, laid them out on the table. We put our candle, lit our candle, put the glass over it, and my friend and I put our hand on it, the glass, and we pretty much went around. He went inviting anyone who was out there to come forth into this little dingy, I guess, little laundry type room that we were sitting in. It was quite unused. It was really just sort of the boiler room / maintenance room, and so we started the process. And didn't take too long for something to start happening. Must have been only about 2 or 3 minutes into it, suddenly the glass moved. And when I say moved, I mean my hand was on top of his, so obviously I looked at him straight away when it did move. And the tears and fear I saw in his eyes pretty much confirmed to me that it was not him. And the force that this glass was moving was incredibly strong, and at no point did I feel that it would be okay to break this cycle. It was like a magnet. There was no way. I thought something terrible would happen if I was to pull away. It didn't seem feasible. But sure enough, this glass started moving. And I was a scribe, so I had one hand free to write down the letters. My friend started asking questions, like, who are you? When did you die? But all we got was nonsense. Pure and utter nonsense. It was either playing with us, illiterate, or I don't know what, but it just went to random letters across the page. My scribing down, which I wish I had kept, though wouldn't have made much sense, it was literally just a jumble of letters. It would not answer a question coherently at all. This must have gone on for a good 10-15 minutes. It felt like longer, but probably wasn't. And again, at no point did we feel we could just pull away from it. Now eventually, after it was obvious we were going to get nowhere in answering any of our questions, my friend invited it to go away. He said, are you going to go away now? And this is the one point where it became coherent. Here is where it decided it could spell, and decided to repeatedly spell out the word no. It went N, it went O, back to the center. It went N, it went O, back to the center. N-O, center, N-O, center, N-O, center. It was making its point very clear. It was not going to go. We ended the summoning shortly after, feeling that we were pretty much done with that. That was the thing we did. That was interesting. But we thought whoever it was, had decided to go after all. Because there was nothing else happening in that house. We didn't feel anything around us, no more energy. The sort of clammy cold feeling that we did have was no longer there. So we thought it had gone. But later that night, we found it had not gone. My parents were downstairs watching TV when my dad suddenly saw a shadow of a man move directly past the curtains. Now this could very easily be dismissed as just flicker of the light, anything like that. Very easy to dismiss that, I know that. But he is convinced that he saw a fully fledged body walking past the curtains. And sure enough, our dog at the time, Shadow, was absolutely freaked out. He did not like it for a second. He went absolutely insane. Later that night, when my parents were going to bed, at some point in the night, the dog again went absolutely mad. He did not want to be in their room. He was staying in their bedroom. He went insane, and he just would not stay in that room. He was so freaked out. He insisted on being let out, and he tore out of the house and would not come back in. But then the strangest thing happened, which makes everything else feel incredibly minor. So my friend went into the bathroom and he came out again looking like he'd seen a ghost again. And he said, go look at the window. I said, what? He said, go look at the window. Okay. So I went into the bathroom, looked at the window, and on there was, now this was double glazing, and on the inner part of the panel, so where you cannot access from either side, and bear in mind this is also on the top floor, in the inner panel was a etching of a pentagram, and that was definitely never there before. There is no way to have drawn it on from the outside. There is no way to draw it from the inside. There is no explanation as to how that got in there, inside this glass. Weirdly enough, the next day it had gone, so it wasn't even there, which we cannot again explain, because this was scratching in the glass. You know, this wasn't like someone had just breathed steam on it and had drawn it on with a finger. This was scratched inside there, and it had then disappeared. What that means, where it had gone, I do not know. Is that good? Is that evil? I genuinely don't know. But that pentagram was the last of its tricks, as it were. It didn't bother us again. It didn't come up with anything else. That was kind of its piece de la resistance, and it worked. If it was trying to scare us, yes, mission accomplished. I went back to that holiday house one more time about a year later, this time without my friend but with my parents, and I felt absolutely nothing, which is very interesting because, as I said, when I was growing up, and we went there since the age of 5, I always had an uneasy feeling. I always felt like I was being watched, so there was some sort of presence. And right up to that point where obviously we did this summoning, there had been that feeling. Now, a year later after this incident, nothing. It felt clear. It felt like whatever was there before all of this anyway had gone. It was like we exercised the house somehow. I can't really take credit for that because we don't really know what we were doing. But all of those occurrences, from the moving of the glass, from the spelling out no, from the little things that happened to my parents, from the pentagram in the window, all of that placed together, it's enough for whenever I have any sort of inkling of doubt when someone might try and put disbelief in my mind about how there cannot be anything past this life, how this is it and then you're done. All I have to do is think back to that incident, and there is nothing in science that can explain that.
Paranormal investigator and TV personality Mark Ponting often tries to find the explanation behind various supernatural incidents. Here's a report on his recent trip to Somerset.
Most recently, went to the ancient Ram Inn. Apparently one of the most haunted places in the area. Witchcraft, demons, poltergeists, entities, you name it, they've got it there, right? It's there, in that building, apparently. Nothing was happening at first, it was all a bit quiet. At one point, I had this bell, it was on the side, and it went off by itself. This, I can't explain, because only somebody has to hit it to set it off. And it went off, all on its own. Somewhere most particular to me, which I found to be the most spookiest, is Barrow Gurney Mental Institute. Now, I went in there thinking that with an open mind, but I don't personally believe in ghosts, so I was like, I'm just going to go in there, and there won't be anything to worry about. It's just going to be an old abandoned mental institute, which would be kind of spooky, and I knew that from the beginning. So I was ready for my mind to play tricks on me, as it were. So we all went in. We went to one of the units where apparently they used to keep the worst insane people, because why not? Let's go there first. And we all sat down with my Ouija board, and we were all sat around, and someone was filming me with the night vision. And just as it was moving to yes, because I asked if there's anyone there, and I was like, someone's obviously moving it. Second it hits yes, across the other side of the room, something falls over. I would say it's around the same size as this thing. Okay? And it falls over. Everyone freaks out, everyone jumps. I say, well, this is an old building. It's condemned, practically. It's fallen to pieces. It's probably something to do with that. Everybody decides they don't like that building anyway, so we move on, and we go to like this other room where it's completely like trashed. We can't go in there, but somebody thinks they see somebody at the end of the corridor. I turn my light on to have a look. The second I go to step in to walk, something falls over in the roof space above. It sounds like a wardrobe has just been chucked over. Everybody freaks out. Does a runner. I end up falling over because I scuffed my arm up. At this point, my heart is going. I'm trying to keep myself focused. I'm thinking, right, this place is just it's falling apart. Come on, it's falling apart. Mark, it's fine. Walking past buildings now, I keep thinking I'm seeing people standing there. I think I see a little girl stood in a window. Naturally, I have to go check it out just to make sure she's not there. Part of me is thinking, there's not going to be anyone around this corner. The other part of me is thinking, that woman from Ghostbusters with the librarian scene with the she's going to be there. So I'm like, step in through this window, walk on in, everyone else follows. I say, is anyone there? The second I say that, something falls over across the side of the room. Everybody leaves that window. I've never seen people jump a window so fast in my life. Just 3 of the girls go back to the car because they're starting to hyperventilate. The rest of us go to the main side, wood side. Second we walk in there, footsteps upstairs. I'm convinced there has to be somebody in there. There has to be somebody there, like physically there. We go upstairs, check all the rooms. Nothing. We're going down these long corridors. Behind us all we can hear is ticks, taps, knocks, bangs, clunks, things being chucked, all sorts. Places going off. It's like a bleeding... It's like it's been set up, but it isn't. It's like some sort of horror film. It's mental. We go up these long big stairs all the way to the top, and a stone comes down. Everyone freaks out. Oh, what was that? What was that? I'm like, it was us. It was us, guys. They're like, us? How was it us? And then I explain that we just come up the stairs, and it was probably, you know, disturbed. And I say to myself, if that wasn't us, do it again. The second the word again leaves my mouth, big stone. Everyone freaks out. At this point, I'm going, nah, this isn't right. There's either somebody here, or it's a ghost. And it's freaking me out. So everyone wants to leave, but I'm adamant that I want to see one more room. So I'm going to this room, nothing's happening, but these guys behind me are saying they're feeling a bit ill. So I turn to them to say, are you alright? Just as I turn like that, I see glass about that long come down the corridor out of nowhere at me and land on the floor. Either that's somebody chucking it who's hiding with some wacky night vision on, the building is somehow, you know, illusion and it's falling from somewhere, or 3 it's a ghost. Either way, I'm out of there.
Barrow Hospital was a psychiatric hospital that was located on what is now Oakley Park Residential Estate on Wild Country Lane in Barrow Gurney, Somerset, England. The hospital opened in 1939 due to overcrowding at the City of Bristol Mental Hospital in Stapleton. The hospital was constructed in a neighbouring woodland known as the Wild Country, which was purchased in 1928. Construction started in 1934, but was halted due to the outbreak of war in 1939, meaning the initial architect's designs were never fully realised. During the war, Barrow Hospital was commandeered by the Navy and was reinvented as the Royal Navy Auxiliary Hospital, primarily treating seamen who had suffered psychological distress while in service. In 1946, a year after the end of the war, the naval staff were removed, and within 2 years the National Health took over the site. Thriving for over a decade, Barrow Hospital became renowned for its progression in the treatment of mental illness. However, by the 1960s it was reported that the standards had drastically declined. Complaints of depressing surroundings and urine-stained furniture came forward from the patients being treated there, and patient numbers reduced dramatically by the 1970s. By 2003, it was announced that the hospital would be closed by 2008. However, in 2005, it was hailed as the dirtiest hospital in Britain in a national survey, and a ceiling had apparently collapsed on the head of a patient in their bed. This brought the closure plan forward. Barrow Hospital closed its doors in 2006, 2 years ahead of the planned closure. Numerous attempts over the following years to redevelop the site were halted by various incidents, such as roosting bats. Gradually, various units were demolished on the site when the Oakley Park estate started construction in 2017, but the remaining structures were a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts due to the increasing reports of otherworldly activity there. For many years, accounts of poltergeist within the ruins of Barrow Hospital were well documented, and the addition of graffiti by Weston-super-Mare street artist JPS only added to the chilling ambience within the corridors, which were adorned with terrifying characters from horror films such as Stephen King's It, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Hellraiser. This, and urban legends that now surround the mystery of the location, contribute to Barrow Hospital going down in history as a place of nightmares.
I was in the fire service from 1981 till 2012, and for the majority of that time I worked at our local station. The station I worked at was unusual in the fact there weren't people on the station for 24 hours. We went home at night on alerters. So we had a part-time staff who worked there who were called the retained, and I started working there in about 1989, and sometime in the early 90s on a Tuesday night. I was going to put my kit away off the fire engine onto the rack where we kept them. And on a Tuesday night, the retained used to come in and fill out their availability for the weekend. And they used to come in for drill at about 7:30 at night. So to see somebody at the board at 5 o'clock was quite a shock. So I saw this guy filling in the board, and I was putting my gear away. So I was thinking up something witty to say, like, you know, all right, you want the weekend off, do you? And what are you doing this Saturday night? Turned around, there was just nobody there. And I was a little bit taken aback. I assumed somebody had gone through the door, so I went to the rest of the station, and none of the retained were there, and they dressed differently from us then. They were in full drum dress uniform, and we were all in working rigs, so it wasn't like it was somebody else from the station, one of the whole-time firefighters who was at the board. It was definitely, what I saw was a retained, but there was nobody there. And I put this to the back of my mind. A few things were said about the station. I think certain people said if you're on your own after 11 o'clock it starts to feel a bit chilled. We just put that down to the heating. Anyway, in March of 2000 there was a massive power cut. All the station, all the area around was blown, and we had to wait without power until they put big generators in to fix the problem with the mains that came into our town. And we got a generator from headquarters that was only going to run the turnout system, because obviously we had absolutely no power in the town, so there's nothing we could do to keep the station working other than attach a generator to the turnout system. A plug was provided and a generator was set up, and I thought, even though I was off the following day, I would stay on call, because sometime during the night the generator would need filling up. So I obviously, during the night, the station got a shout. I ran over, and in the pitch dark started winding the doors up, which by hand take a heck of a long time. Obviously the electricity wasn't working, so I worked the thing, and by the time I'd got the doors up, everybody had come in, they're ready to go in the fire engine. The fire engine went out, and I went down to fill the bucket. I thought I might as well get the shout and just fill the bucket and take what they call watchroom, which was you look after the station while it's empty. And I did that. I went down, I was filling the book, and I heard footsteps down the corridor, and the torch I was using to fill in the book, I just shone up at the door, and the door opened and closed, and there was nobody there. And I just thought, well, somebody's messing me about. But I thought it might be a member of the public, might be one of the retained coming in late, whatever it is, I'll check. So I went out to the corridor, and there was absolutely no sign, no other footsteps, and I just thought, well, somebody's messing me about. Anyway, I needed to fill up the generator, so I called control, and I said, I'm going to take the turnout system off the run while I unplug the generator and let it cool, and then top it up. And as I put the phone down, the signal went through the turnout system to say that it had gone off the run. And I thought, they must have flicked a switch at control. I now know that switch doesn't exist. So as I put the phone down, having just said I was going to take the system off the run, the alert went through to say the system was off the run, even though the generator was still running. So I thought, it felt a bit strange, but I thought, well, it's not off the run, it shouldn't have done that. But I went out the back, unplugged the generator, turned it off, let it cool for a few minutes, filled the fuel up, and then as I held the handle to turn the generator back on, the sound came through the system to say the system was back on. There was no power in the system for it to tell me that. There was nothing happening. There was no power anywhere in our town at all. There was no battery backup, there was nothing. The system said it was turned back on before there was anything to give it the energy to send that message. And at that moment I knew there was something else doing all the things that happened since I got on the station. So we're used to people playing pranks in the fire service, but when they come from the other side, it really does make you worry. So I turned the generator back on, put it back in position, chained it up, and then walked through the station and stood at the open front doors until the fire engine got back. And I told people what happened, and a lot of people have given me a lot of explanations, but none of them have ever convinced me that what happened that night wasn't something very strange.
Some people say that our senses are heightened during dimly lit situations, and in darkness it's not heard of for us to think we see things out of the corner of our eye or hear sounds that defy all explanation. Is it possible that Jonathan was witness to a mischievous phantom during that power cut in the year 2000? Anything is possible when you step into the unknown.